All right, and we show live for Juju Show, Episode 2, The Force Awakens. Gotta get my tickets for the movie. Everyone, welcome. This is the Juju Show number 2, where we go and talk about the latest in the happenings of the Juju community, developments from the engineering teams, and just overall chat about our favorite little DevOps tool. So let's do a round of some introductions. My name is Rick Harding, work on the Juju engineering team, and I'll start over on my left side and head over. So Alexis, would you like to go?
Yep, my name is Alexis Broomer, and I am also an engineering manager for the Juju core team, so Rick's counterpart.
What do you guys think about doing location in these things? I think it'd be kind of cool to be like, I want to be like, I'm Rick from Detroit area, and Alexis is over West Coast, Portland area. I have no idea where James is at. I don't know. And so, Antonio, you're up next.
I'm Antonio Rosales. I'm over from Denver, Colorado. Work on the Juju ecosystem team, building out solutions with Juju. So, hello.
All right. Ski vacation on Antonio's house. Cory.
Hi, I'm Cory Johns, and I'm from the Gainesville, Florida area, and I work on big data and tooling, including Matrix.
Cool. James.
Hello, I'm James Beatty. I'm from Portland, Oregon. I'm a DevOps engineer for Creative Drive.
Awesome. George.
Hi, I'm George Castro, Ann Arbor, Michigan, home of the Michigan State Spartans. All right.
Wait a minute. Not the Spartans.
This week.
No. The University of Michigan Wolverines are in Ann Arbor. You totally misrepresented there. Fail. All right, carry on. Kevin, redeem us, please.
Yeah, well, so I'm from Austin, Texas, hook 'em horns. I work on the big software team with Cory Johns.
All right, Tim, where are you at?
Hey, I'm Tim Van Steenberg, also from Gainesville, Florida. I'm on the Juju ecosystem team, and I work on testing tools, review queue, Python, Juju clients, etc.
Cool. All right, so let's start this conversation off with going through kind of community news from the last 2 weeks. There are a couple of interesting things that I think are worth pulling out from the mailing list threads, and this is from both the Juju mailing list and there's a Juju dev mailing list that's a little bit more on the deep internals if you're interested, so make sure to check those things out by subscribing to those mailing lists. The first one I wanted to talk about is kind of a controversial one. It's one that we had a lot of conversations, and honestly, I don't have an answer for yet, and so I wanted to kind of kick off a conversation and see how we wanted to go here. Juju has this great feature called resources. The team put a lot of hard work to get that in place. That allows you to have a charm, and our charms basically are all of the operations code. Allow it to require some sort of big blob of data, be it your application that the revision application you're delivering, a binary of some sort. An example is like a JRE that you may need in order to run. It could just be a blob of data. Maybe you've got something big data and you want to deliver a bunch of CSV files to chew through and process. So this is great, except that often, most of the time, these charms require the resources in order to operate, right? So when we designed the feature, we had a concern about charms going into the store that then other users would not be able to actually use because they didn't have the right resource, or that were just darn hard to use because getting a right resource together in the right format was very difficult. So we had a mandate that if you're going to publish a charm to the public in the store, that you have to supply at least a dummy resource. And the role model for this was really the Django application charm, right? So if I want to test and play with the Django charm and try it out, it'd be great for the author to supply a basic Django application that at least brought up a hello world page, so that I could see, yay, the charm worked. And then I could supply my own Django application by providing a local resource after the fact or separately. However, there's been a lot of contention in this and that. There are some things that are just flat required and also are not redistributable by folks working on the charms. Anyone here have one of those as an example one that they want to personally relate to? Or I can pull another example out, but we can talk about a factual one if anyone has one. No? We're finding our mute buttons. All right. An interesting one that I know hit the list was actually a Windows application. This was some cloud-based folks working on a Windows charm, and I don't remember what the actual software, whether it was Exchange or something, but there's a clause in the terms that say you can't redistribute that. And so they could not supply this chunk of Windows software to the store as a default resource. So you have to supply it kind of at deploy time. Here's my ISO or whatever of the actual application. So the question is should resources be made optional, where you can say, here's my charm, and if you supply these things, they're kind of optionally able to be sent up when at deploy time, but that we wouldn't require them as part of publishing the charm. Anyone on the other side of this? Like, I need someone to go against me to debate. Come on, who wants it to be optional?
I think it should be.
I think it should be.
All right, here we go. Okay.
So I think that no matter what, like, you're always going to have companies that expect you to register and put stuff behind a paywall.
Yeah.
Like, as much as we talk about how great DevOps is and automating everything, there's going to be companies that they don't want that model.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for people who do modern DevOps and stuff, that seems crazy, but who am I to judge, right? If they want to stick their stuff in there, that's fine. I mean, as long as it's, I think as long as it's clearly noted, like in the README or somewhere in the charm store, so that, oh no, I tried Juju deploy Oracle something, and it didn't work. I was expecting it to all be free, right? Like, nobody gets into that kind of hole. I think as long as it's obvious.
Sure.
I don't see a problem.
Who else was the other one that wants optional?
Yeah, so I have a charm that I reviewed recently, the IBM WebSphere base charm. They have two resources defined, one for the installer itself, right? So if you have this installer image that you want to use to install the charm, that's great. And also they have a fix pack. IBM distributes fix packs or updates to the WebSphere software. I don't always want to install a fix pack, right? If it's available, sure, maybe I'll take it. But what if it's GA version 0? I don't have a fix pack yet.
Okay.
It'd be nice if I could say the fix pack is optional.
Gotcha. And supplying a dummy empty fix pack as part of publishing the charm would be a burden because just one extra step.
For one thing, it makes it seem like there is a fix pack available, and when there in fact isn't.
Gotcha.
So it's a little bit misleading, and it is a little bit annoying to have to upload a dummy resource.
Yeah. So just to kind of the thing I'm permanently concerned about is the quality of the charms in the store, right? We want users to be able to find something in the store and go put it to work. And the more, the whole point is the operations knowledge is in the charm. And so you should be able to get going at it without having to go read a bunch of manuals or pull a bunch of stuff and all that. That kind of out of the box experience, I feel like, is very important to Juju. If anything, it's something we actually struggle against in that the hurdle to get started is a little bit larger than we want. We're continuously trying to refine that down. And so my concern is folks will find things that, I'm interested in running this, only to find blockers and things that won't work for them, that then they have to go through. And yes, it can be in the README, but to have those extra steps to kind of know to find the README info. So that's my first concern and probably the biggest one. Yeah.
But you're talking these kind of click-through agreements and all that stuff, that's not operationals knowledge. That's legal blockers that were put there on purpose to stop you from doing what you want to do, right?
But it's operations is where to get the binary. Where's the code that I need to run and execute? That's part of operations. It's install, right?
True. But what I'm saying is like, you're not going to convince people who are distributing software this way. First of all, they would have done it by now, right. I think, like during the age of config management. And I don't know. It just seems that we're trying to put a technical solution to a problem that's like a cultural and legal one.
Cool.
I don't know.
Yeah. The other concern I have is that we're taking very seriously the quality of the charms as far as making sure that they have tests, that those tests pass, that bundles work when people build solutions and things out of them. And my concern with optional resources is that it really hurts us in our ability to do this kind of verification that charms are of a certain quality measure. If you can't have the binary to run, how can I test that if I relate it to this other thing that the expected behavior actually comes out and falls through? And that's the gap that I feel like I haven't gotten folks on the mailing list to buy in. And I'm curious what folks think, because basically what it means is we'd have charms in the store, which may be useful, but at the end of the day, I can't vouch for their quality. We can't put it in our automated systems where we run through and test and check these things. And so to me, the only step I can figure out to go from here would be to kind of degrade those charms in the eyes of the store as far as not being fully vetted charms. And so which you could totally have them in the store. Let's say we decide to do optional resources. What are folks' thoughts of taking that and going, okay, you can have an optional resource, but that automatically means then that your charm can't be vetted well enough to actually become a recommended, curated charm in the store?
So I have a comment on that. So I think there's a distinction here between the use case of an optional resource, which we have de facto already with these 0-byte resources. And I don't think those hinder testing in any way. I think that those are something that the charm knows that they're optional. It knows it needs to deal with them. Maybe what we need in that case is a way for the charm to indicate this resource is optional, so that Juju can maybe provide some hints about how it should be used. And perhaps the same thing goes for resources that we know are going to be required but are external due to legal reason. And and I think those definitely, I mean, there's no way we can automatically do any sort of automated CI on them or provide any assurances from our end that they work unless we have specific maybe more manual paths worked out with the people, with the authors of that charm.
No, that's a great point on breaking the two different cases out. I would push back in the sense, though, that if you have an optional resource and we use a 0-byte resource now for that, yes, you can test that it behaves correctly when it does not have that resource, but nothing currently, we don't have anything in our tooling to help test when that resource is provided that it does work, right? So again, if I have a Django app and I have an optional, let's say your app is running or not, and let's rather than a demo app, I just had a 0-byte resource and go, well, the Django charm will deploy, it'll say all is well, that it, but it doesn't have an actual application to run, then actually wiring that up to Postgres through a relation doesn't mean I can do anything to validate that I am able to talk to Postgres because I have no application, right? I don't know. It may or may not be working.
But my point then, it kind of touches on the other aspect is if we're expecting the user to provide that resource, whether it's officially optional or de facto optional, the fact is that we're not going to be able to test what happens if the user provides that because we don't know a priori what the user might provide for that. So if the resource is provided in the store, then we can automatically test that. If it's something that's indicated as optional, it's something we know we're never going to be able to reliably automatically test. And maybe we can have some sort of indicator, if that's explicit, we can have some sort of indicator on the store that says, this resource is optional and therefore is untested.
Okay. Cool. All right.
But sorry, I'm saying I was thinking is there a way to ding these on the store? I think there's something to be said also about people who want, I don't think we should necessarily call it a minus, just we are not capable to doing this, because there's people who want it to be that way, right? Oh, good, they're not just out grabbing things, right? It my team gets these from that software vendor, and this is the binary that we tested, and whatever. I'm just kind of trying to be cognizant of that without being hey, you guys do it differently, therefore you get a -10 score on search results or something like that.
Sure.
I think we should just show it as different and let the users decide whether that's better or worse. You know what I mean? Without trying to get into the whole, because then it gets kind of I don't know. Maybe that's just me.
No.
So doesn't this provide a good definition for the separation of application and operations code? To the extent that, well, the operations code should succeed independently, notwithstanding of what the application code has to offer, right?
I think that the issue is there's a tight coupling, right? The way we validate did the operations code succeed or not is often by poking at the application, right? It's I only know for sure when my bundle deployed successfully when I actually go pull up the front end to it and it says that all is well in the world. And I think maybe that's where there's a gap or a room for some interesting tooling as far as actually testing the operations completely independently from the application and how that might look or feel. But things like, say, your config file, be it an ini file or a Python, Py file, those tend to be distributed as part of the application with a base config, and then the operations code modifies it, right? So it's interesting. It's kind of like, can you stub out a config file so that you can test the operations in a nice way without needing the application to actually be there or not? Interesting question. All right, cool. I appreciate the conversation here. Hopefully this sheds some light that it's definitely a complicated problem and that there are a couple different use cases that get swarmed together under the one idea of optional resources. The good news is that from the local standpoint, you can make all this work. And really what we're talking about is how does this get distributed very well with others? So we want to improve that, and we'll definitely be putting some time into finding ways to make that better. The next topic I wanted to bring up for the mailing list was that Marco updated the SVG Generator, the bundle SVG Generator tool. And this was something I wanted to bring up mainly just as knowledge sharing. It's really kind of cool. I know a lot of folks like to document or do presentations or, just have available kind of that picture overview of what their model is and looks like, or what a bundle will do, right? That picture of a bundle is worth 1,000 lines of YAML, right? And so Marco has put together this tool that uses a Go library underneath to help take a bundle and build what the GUI would build, kind of as a visualization of these are the components and how they would look and line up. And so he's updated this recently. And so if you've ever wanted to, man, I have this YAML file, but I would love to have the picture of what it does, it's a really useful tool to do just that. So I'd encourage folks to go, check it out, participate, and see if it helps solve that purpose for them. Anyone else use this besides myself? A couple folks, yeah. It's often pretty, especially if you're doing presentations and things. But I actually know someone who did it as part of the documentation for what they actually had. They had a picture in along with the YAML, so you can kind of see and kept them in sync, which was kind of cool. All righty. Anything else anyone wants to bring up for news of the week? Then let's roll on. Release schedule. You guys might have seen Juju 2.0.2 went out the door. We'll have a link here in the show notes with the announcement, and it has a couple of updates for OpenStack provider bug and a memory use bug. So if you're on 2.0.1, time to go upgrade. Everyone go grab those controllers and run Juju upgrade Juju. 125.9 went out this morning, so that's the latest in our old release. Again, I think there was two different issues that were addressed in that as bug fixes, so check the announcement, and if those would hit you at all, make sure you get your upgrades in. And then, not there yet. I was hoping we might have it somewhere come around. The next release is 2.1, and we have a beta 3 of that coming out this week. So look for that for the latest in playing with what's coming down the pipe with Juju 2.1. There's a lot of particularly interesting things in here. Model migrations is going to come out of beta. Interactive Ad Cloud for getting going will be in there. You can play with that in the beta, along with a bunch of bug fixes and some other work. So make sure to check out the announcements and give it a roll, and then file your bugs and give us your feedback. We really appreciate everyone trying it out. And
hey, Rick, I have a question about upgrades. So let's say I have a 2.0.1 controller, and I upgrade my client to 2.0.2. I assume that will work fine.
Totally.
Because it's a bug fix release. So at what point do you would have to bootstrap a new controller in order to be compatible with the new client? Is it minor releases?
Major. I think at the moment we definitely have planned that a 2.0, a later 2.x client should be able to talk to older 2.x releases. So if we really break where a client can no longer talk to old controllers, really the only way we've done that is to have a backward incompatible issue, which at that point you're talking about a major revision update if you're completely not compatible. So that's our outlook on stuff. So we expect 2.1 and 2.2, you should be able to use those newer clients on older infrastructure. And then plus for us, it's how upgrades really work, right? We give you a 2.2 client. Well, it has all the knowledge it needs on how to bring a 2.1 controller up to a 2.2 level. So.
Okay, so if we're testing a 2.1 2.1 beta against a 2.01 controller and we hit problems, we should
file a bug, definitely.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. And I would encourage folks though to obviously, you know, we have the snap, which is a great way to test out the betas in a contained area where you get a separate binary and you can try that out. It even has its own path for clouds and credentials and things, or you know, just your own self-made containers, because obviously they are a beta and we do make mistakes and things. So we would hate to have a client, you know, we're playing with add cloud, for instance, if we accidentally break the add cloud command and you're no longer able to add a new cloud to your running configuration, that would be ungood. And we'd hate to have you stuck that way. Cool. All righty. And then one note, or talking about upgrades in particular, just want to make sure everyone's kind of clear. In our new multi-model controller world, the controller needs to be ahead of or equal to the version that the models are on, right? So upgrades are kind of decoupled. A controller can be a later version, and the models may not have been upgraded with it yet, right? And so just be careful that when you do upgrade, that you do the controller first. Obviously, a model can't talk to a controller and ask it for things that it doesn't know how to deliver over the API, right? So let's say model migrations, for instance. If you try to upgrade a model to 2.1, the controller doesn't know how in the world to migrate if the controller is still on 2.0.2, for instance. So just as far as the steps there. Now with model migrations, what'll be really fun and interesting is that we have a whole new way of upgrading, which is not to actually upgrade in place, but to actually bring up a brand new empty controller and move stuff over bit by bit. And I think Alexis is going to show us some of that shortly.
Woohoo! Hey, Rick, just on that topic, to do the upgrade, like you just mentioned, you know, your controller needs to go first. So the steps are Juju switch controller.
Yep.
Right. Then Juju upgrade Juju.
Totally.
Then switch to each model and do that as well.
Yes. Yep. And that reduces your risk of trying to upgrade the controller and all the models all in one shot, right? Consider that to be a little bit more risky endeavor. So the other flat out of if you're really confident in it, just script it, right? For model in list models, just let it go rip. Cool. All right. So our first show and tell of the day, we have Charm CI and Matrix from Kevin and Cory. So we had a lot of good discussions on the mailing list in the last 2 weeks here around testing and the tools we've got coming up for testing. So Cory, Kevin, take it away. What do you got for us?
Yeah, so let me take it because I'm going to touch on both Review Queue and the Matrix, which will, as I give the 10,000 foot view, then Cory can do a little deeper in Matrix and Tim will do a little deeper on Review later. So I'll start by this. We sort of announced our intentions on here in the Juju channel, the post to the mailing list about Charm CI, right? Forever we've had a lot of tooling around charm tests, bundle tests, and it's very, you know, even for a seasoned Juju charmer, it can be very confusing which tools to use, where to use them. You know, where does Cloud Weather Report fit in with Bundle Tester, and when do I run my Amulet tests, and how are those tied to unit tests, and why is there the Matrix being talked about? So we thought it sensible to come up with a good CI process for people that want to do CI and CD of their charm migration. Whenever I commit a change to a charm, something will build that and deploy it, test it, give me some kind of results, some kind of confidence that my charm change has been proven good, and then go so far as to push it into my namespace in the charm store. So that's what we kind of have been struggling with, and that's what we announced on the list. We have a couple of bundles that will do just that. We call them the CWR bundles. The backbone of of both of these solutions is the Cloud Weather Report. That is an application that will test charms and bundles on multiple clouds, which at the end of the day is what we're trying to do here. We want to make sure that an application performs the same on Amazon as it does on Maz, right? So CWR is really our entry point into this system. And we've developed the CI bundle that can attach to a GitHub and walk through the CI process all the way through deployment to or release to the charm store. And we also have a version of that bundle, a superset of that bundle that includes the review queue for anybody, perhaps in-house you want a charm source review system. You know, we use the review queue. So if you wanted to also use the review queue internally, or making that available, the workflow in that instance would go from, you know, I import my charm, I tell my team that I want a review on this charm. The review queue will automatically invoke whatever it needs to do to test that charm on a variety of substrates, and then return those results back to you. The nice thing about the review has you know, source review capabilities built in. So you see the source of the charm. You can make notes in line in addition to the test results, right, on the various substrates. So a couple of bundles there that are the beginnings of our CI pipeline, and we're extremely eager feedback. We've already had a few suggestions on list about workflows that differ a little bit. I know the Kubernetes guys have got some CI work happening right now, and we're very interested to adjust our solution to you know, fit those needs as well.
Cool.
So check it out, read them, and let us know. We've got the repos available, and certainly open issues, or talk to us on Pound Juju to discuss more about the CI system.
Cool. Cory, do you want to add anything in particular on the matrix side of things?
Yeah, so just a real quick recap on or overview on the matrix in case people haven't heard of it. I'm putting a link in the sidebar here. The idea of this is it's going to be a component of this CI process, like Kevin mentioned. But the idea is that we've found that when trying to talk about testing of charms, it really doesn't make sense for a charm to be tested in isolation. It really makes more sense for a charm to be tested as part of a bundle. And also there are a lot of common operations that are done on a charm that are part of the Juju kind of vocabulary that all charms really need to support and need to have tested against them, but don't necessarily putting the burden of doing that testing on the individual charm authors means that there's a lot of repeated testing code and testing logic, and each charm author might not remember to test all of the different operations that might be involved. And it also brings in some of the ideas of things like the Netflix idea of chaos monkey, which we call in the matrix world glitch, where, you know, when you have a system deployed in the real world, things that you weren't expecting may happen, and they may happen in an order that you're not expecting. So we have this matrix as a tool that has a built-in set of tests that include running random permutations on the model, and you know, doing things like scaling the model up and down, and ensuring that the bundle or the solution as a whole can kind of remain stable under those sorts of transformations that we expect. Eventually, we hope to be able to include things like deploying an older version of the charms in the bundle and doing upgrades, and other similar operations. So the idea of the main goal of the matrix is to kind of shift some of the burden of testing away from the charm authors, so you don't have to have as many or perhaps any amulet tests in your charm, and can rely on this this kind of built-in set of suites in the matrix, and also to provide a language for specifying tests that use some of our new tooling like libjuju to write tests in a more asynchronous way, and you know, using some of the newer tooling to kind of you know, move some of the difficulties that were present in writing amulet tests away, and making them easier for charm authors to do if they need to do specific tests of their specific functionality. So,
cool. Is there somewhere I can go to get an example of the latest greatest of using matrix in my tests? Is there a certain charm or bundle I can look for, or a demo that I can go see?
Yeah, the matrix README. I linked the repo in the Pound Juju channel. The matrix README has examples of how to use it. You can run it against you know, any bundle in the store, We've also added integration for Matrix into Bundle Tester. So if you have Matrix installed, when you run Bundle Tester against a bundle, it will run Matrix as one of the test cases. So you can get that sort of feedback in there as well. So there, as I said, there's examples in the README. If there's anything that's missing from that, let us know. This is still being developed, so we definitely want to make it as approachable as possible.
Great. Can you tell us that link in the show notes? We'll make sure that those are there in the show notes when we get this published up after the fact. That'd be great. Awesome. Thanks, Tim. All right. So I've got tests. I have a charm. I'm testing it now. Tim, I want to share it with the world. Tell me about it. What's going on in the latest in getting through the actual review and publish process?
Okay. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the review queue. Is this visible? Yeah, totally. It is. Okay. So to be clear, the review queue, you only need the review queue if you want to get your charm into the top level namespace of the charm store. If you've got your thing pushed to your own namespace and that works fine for you, that's fine. You can run it like that forever. If you want to get it into the top level namespace, you have to go through the review queue. So the most important thing to remember is review.jujucharms.com. Just go there. That's where you will start. You'll see a page like this that has all the items currently in the queue. You have to be logged in to really do anything useful with the review queue. So I'm already logged in, but if I wasn't, there would be a login link up here. So just make sure you're logged in. That uses Ubuntu SSO. So as long as you have an Ubuntu SSO account, like with Launchpad or whatever, then you can log in here. To get your charm into the queue, just click on Request to Review once you're logged in. You will put in the URL of the thing that you want reviewed in here. And I'm not going to do one because I don't want it actually going into the queue. And an optional description of the changes you've made or want reviewed. Some checkboxes for people who are in oil or CPP. So you just submit it. It'll do some validation on that, let you know, make sure, it'll make sure they can actually import the thing that you put here. It'll give you feedback if it can't for any reason, like you don't have the right permissions or it's on the wrong channel or something like that. But as long as you've read and followed these instructions here, you should be fine. Once you get into the review, yeah, go ahead.
Yes, right. So I just want to be clear though. So you're asking me for a charm store URL. So clearly this is a way for me to take a charm I've already uploaded into my namespace and then to go submit it for review for the higher level namespace, right? So I would not come here if I've only got my charm in GitHub and haven't yet pushed it up to the store under my own namespace, right?
That is correct. So one of this little checklist up here, make sure you've reviewed policy, make sure you've uploaded and published a charm to the store, granted read permission so that the review queue can read it, etc. So like I said, as long as you actually read this small wall of text, you should be okay. So once you're in the queue, you'll show up in the main index, and we'll just click through one of these to see. Well, I should have mentioned. We'll probably add some stuff to this page here, but right now the most useful feature is probably your little progress report here that shows you kind of progress on your review, what's happening, how green versus red you are in terms of getting your thing approved and promulgated to the store. So if we look at one of these, this one has a lot of revisions. You can import new revisions manually, or they will be imported for you automatically. So if you start your review with, like this one started with version 7 of DocuWiki, but as more revisions were pushed to the store, they were imported automatically by the review queue. So you're always looking at the latest one. Tests are kicked off automatically, and they're either, when possible, they're imported into some format that we can display a little bit more nicely. If we're unable to do that for whatever reason, we'll at least show a link to the Jenkins job. If you want to fire off more tests, for example, on different substrates, you can do that as well. There's all the kind of stuff you would expect here, commenting on the review, voting on the review. as the owner of the review, your goal is to get a +2 vote. Once you get +2, it goes to approved status, and that's when a charmer can go ahead and promulgate your thing to the store, your charm to the store. Some other features of the review. This is where the green and red progress report comes from. There's a big list of policy stuff that needs to be mostly green in order for your charm to pass review. And so these charmers will come in here and check, pass or fail on these things, and that's where your progress report comes from. Like Kevin mentioned earlier, we have the full source diff. So there's an index here, so you just don't have a wall of diff, but the entire source of your charm is imported here so that the reviewer can just scan through without having to pull source manually. As a reviewer, you can leave inline diff comments here, and those will show up here in a nice little index.
Now, is that just in my last revision and the current?
Yeah, so there's this little toggle here. So you can, the diff, right now it would show all changes, but you can also just do changes since the last revision. Once if you're the owner of this and somebody comments on your review, you'll get an email with that comment, so you know stuff is happening and you'll know if you need to do anything. Anybody who comments on a review will receive emails about any subsequent activity on the review, so everybody can kind of stay involved with what's going on with the stuff that they're reviewing or having reviewed. I should point out that anyone who is logged into the review queue can participate in a review. So you're free to comment, you're free to check policy items. Only members of the Charmers group can actually do the promulgation at the end and close it out, but anyone else is welcome to comment and participate in the review.
Great. That sounds like a great way for potential contributors to get involved, to help learn about charms, and as well to keep an eye out on what cool charms that they may be interested in coming down the pipe.
Yes, and yeah, excuse me, just one more thing. Speaking of being involved, in the footer of the site is everything you need to know to participate code-wise with the review queue. If you want to contribute or report a bug, those will link you to the review queue repo. There's lots of little issues still that we're working through. This is a pyramid app. If you want to participate, the README does a very good job of explaining how to get this up and running locally if you want to hack on the review queue. But if you just want to file bugs that you find, that's also extremely helpful. So please feel free to do that if you find any issues.
And nothing there's directly tied to promulgation. Like someone, I think Kevin or Cory was mentioning, if I want to run my own review queue just because of my own internal charms, I could totally do that and implement that across my development team, right? And have those kind of encourage folks to submit changes, get them kind of code reviewed, and tested and such.
Yes, there's nothing specific to Canonical, and the review queue app and the charm are both open source on GitHub. So
I'm going to guess, is there a charm actually for the review queue if I want to short circuit?
There is a charm for the review queue. I think here. Yes. So this is a pretty nice example of a reactive charm, if I do say so myself. Cory and I worked on putting this together. So yeah, feel free to take that and use it as well.
Great. Awesome. Well, thanks. Yeah.
And on that note, I believe Kevin's also working to be able to have a review queue bundle that has the Jenkins and everything in there for infrastructure-wise, in addition to a CI bundle, like I said before. And those are under the Juju Solutions namespace, so make sure to include them in the links so folks can see them later. But yeah, wanting to try it locally, that review system actually works kind of nice.
Right. Gotta love tools that help make it easier to produce quality, tested, looked at code. So
the nice thing is Juju deploy repeatable. You can be able to, try it, test it, see it, use it on your own, and then iterate from there. I had 2 quick points to follow in there too, real quick, if that's all right, Rick.
Sure.
So I sent a mail to the mailing list on things folks would need to do as a potential contributor or as a maintainer. And so those specific things are, I'll send a link to that, but if you're a maintainer and you've been using Launchpad, the thing to note here, if you haven't seen it already, is that your charms will no longer be ingested. Those charms now need to be put into the source control of your choosing, and that's actually a feature folks wanted. So you can put into GitHub, but put your code into GitHub. You then need to be able to, migrate any potential branch requests that are in Launchpad, put them in wherever you want, get those all into your master branch. And then when you feel it's ready to be released, push that to the charm store with the charm tools command. So charm push to the charm store. Once you have that in the charm store, as I said before, if you want it to be in the recommended top level namespace, follow the review queue itself here. So the maintainers have that to be able to make sure they're putting it and reviewing it. And more of the code review goes in place wherever that upstream is at. And then when they're ready to release, they submit up to here. So most of the review had probably already been done in the upstream community there. So that's a big change from the previous process that folks should be aware of. That's for maintainers. On the contributor side, again, the place you want to submit a pull submit to used to be the review queue. Now it's to wherever the upstream is at. How you find the upstream is you go to jujucharms.com, pull up the charms details page. On the sidebar, there is a project link and submit a bug link. Go to the project page and submit a pull request. In there, it's where you'll do the actual collaborating on the charm and getting it ready and working with the maintainer there to get it set. Once the maintainer of that charm feels great, then they do a charm push. So two fundamental differences there. We'll include, again, the link on the list, but I also want to bring it up here.
Cool.
And then on the matrix, is folks aware, if you're using Bundle Tester has the ability, Bundle Tester is going to call matrix. So if you're using Bundle Tester today and later releases of that, it'll just grow the ability to then give you matrix output.
Awesome. Thanks, there. So everyone, lots of reading to do and updates to procedure to really make things smooth and encourage quality, which is always a big boon when you're trying to get folks to use your stuff, for sure. All right, I see Alexis has got a terminal up. It seems like she's eager and chomping at the bit to demo a new feature in Juju coming down the line in 2.1. We mentioned model migrations. And so, Alexis, show us what you got.
All right. So as Rick mentioned before, model migrations is the ability in our multi-controller, multi-model world to migrate one model to another controller. So from one controller to another controller. One of the main use cases here, which Rick also mentioned earlier, was that if you want to upgrade your controller without putting any risks in your current environment, then this allows you to do that, get the controller upgraded and working, and then migrate your existing models over.
Quick pause there.
Font size, please.
Yep.
Yes, I will increase the font size. People can't see my tiny print. Hang on.
I think you need a new name for your laptop there. I think when you've got 4 or 5 hyphens in the name of your machine.
It's too many.
I'm going to find your machine and rename it Bob.
Okay, can people see that okay? I did mess up my sizings here. I should split these. My apologies. I test this quite often, but not in front of people. Okay, so let me show you what I've got going on here. If I get a status going, I assume people can still hear me here. This is an Elasticsearch bundle, basic bundle. As you can see, I'm on a model foo controller A. My environment, first of all, 2 controllers here, controller A, controller B. It's a fairly standard test setup that we've been using internally to test this feature. If I list models on my current controller, on controller A, you'll see I'll have this model foo that I'm on. If I do the same thing with controller B, you will see I just got the basic model, the controller and defaults. So if I go ahead and run our migrate, and I will show you here just quickly. So we have Juju migrate as a command, which model I'm migrating, which is foo, to which controller. So foo is currently on A. I'll migrate it to B, and then we'll watch the status here. Here we go. You will see that obviously controller or the model's not found. You'll see down here that we're going through the process. So as this goes, migration has several steps. A starting step, which will the migration command will go through that the model that is migrating is able to migrate. It will check the new controller, make sure it has everything that it needs to be able to migrate the model. It will copy any resources or things that are over that needs to run the workload that's on the model. It will go ahead and transfer all of the model's information to the new controller. And then it will restart all the agents and hopefully you'll see as after all of that runs. I'm now looking at model foo on controller B. And it is all working, and we no longer have model foo on controller A. This is
whoa,
yeah. And this is fun. This is fun to do. You can go back and forth. If you guys want me to, I can go back. Shall we go back? Shall we put foo back on controller A?
Let's put it to work. Go back and we can talk about how cool this is and really dive into the awesomeness here.
Yeah. So let me do a D2 switch.
So
sorry, I have a cold. So.
What's going on underneath this? And like, what if you don't have two LexD controllers right next to each other on the same machine? What exactly is getting transferred here?
So what's great is that Juju is basically a thing that organizes and manages state. Right? I mean, you have all these machines running all this software, and it's all got its operational knowledge baked into it. But what Juju actually stores is basically a database of records about each of what the expected state is on everything. And when the state changes, it updates the database. So all that this migration is doing is saying, I want a new manager of my state. It sends it all the existing state. And then it tells everything running, hey, your new guy to talk to whenever you want to change or modify states over here now. So it's not moving or managing any of the actual applications that are running. So your new controller has to be somewhere that the other ones can relate to, right? So you couldn't move the controller from one cloud to another or something in that case, right? You're really migrating amongst stuff that's already running. It does a few steps here, which I think are really, appreciate the brilliance of some of this, right? We have now a way in Juju to tell all the agents, all the stuff that's running, hey, you guys all shush for a little bit. We're going to be doing some work. Just queue up events, right? So if anything happens or wants to happen, it just gets shut down and kind of queued. And then it does this very safely in that you have a new controller. The old controller sends it puts everything in pause state kind of thing. It tells the new controller, okay, here's a dump of all my data. And what we have is a really clean format for that data dump, which is going to help us in other stuff down the road, which you'll hear about when we get additional features in. But it's kind of like, think of it like a bundle dump, but with everything in state. Like a bundle lets you bring something up, but all the current history and all that, what resources are in there, what charms are available in the cache in the controller, all that stuff's all packaged up and sent to the new controller. And then it loads all that data, and then it talks back to the first controller and says, hey, this is what I see. Is that look same to you? And the two have to agree that, yes, the data got passed correctly. It sanity checks it. Not only that, then, the new controller starts talking to all the other agents out there and validating that their view of the world matches the new controller's view of the world. If at any point anyone disagrees, the process stops and aborts. So what's great is that there's several really solid sanity checks that this migration is going to be solid and 100% safe before anything gets shut down or turned off or anything like that. So what was great is we had a demo at a sprint recently and it failed. But what was awesome was it failed so cleanly. It ran for a bit, it failed, noticed it failed, and you ended up right back where you started with everything running on the original controller. It was all happy, hunky-dory.
Well, and just now when I tried to go back, I've had this LexD environment up for a while. I'm actually looking at the logs. I see a bug in LexD, the LexD provider, which, well, obviously have to file. But what happened there is it did the pre-checks and it said, oh, your model's not, or your new controller, I can't quite talk through this connection. I'm not gonna do the migration.
Migrate
so
back.
the sanity checks here, yeah, the sanity checks here are good. Although I do need to go file this one.
Yeah. And the reason we talk about this for upgrades is that this is like the primo way to do upgrades going forward, right? Because how often do you run Juju upgrade Juju, cross your fingers and your toes, and then do this little maneuver and go, all right, go, magic button, and hit it and go. In this way, what you can do is bring up a newer version of a new controller at a newer version. migrate a model over, make sure everything's fine. You know, you can test it. If it fails at all, it'll just go back to the original controller. So it's a very safe way. It's even a way to do load balancing. We think this is going to be a great way of, you have a controller and it gets to get loaded over 20 models. You can take the heaviest model and migrate it to its own new controller in a real nice, safe, clean way. And then the other, let's say you had 10 running and you moved one, the other 9 are still running on the old controller, and the new ones in its new home. And so this feature bakes in a lot of what we feel like are just really vital to running and operating Juju itself at scale. So it's very exciting stuff.
Is the constraint that the controller has to be under the same cloud substrate?
Well, so right now controllers are single cloud anyways.
Right.
So yes, that is a current constraint.
And it does things like network connectivity checks. I think in theory you could put the controller, let's say, in a different region, but you'd have to make sure, like if you had different default VPCs in different regions and that, in theory you could bring up a new controller that couldn't talk to the old one, in which case the migration would just fail. It'd go, you told me to migrate here, but I can't talk to it. So it would just stop and help you correct along the way.
Cool. Awesome work. Thank you.
Cool. So look for this in 2.1. The feature flag is off, right? So in beta 3, it's off the feature flag, and then we're polishing it up between now and final?
That is correct. So please do play with it, open up bugs. There are a few known issues. If you look up the model migrations tag on Launchpad, they're there. We'll mention those in our next release. But definitely want to get some feedback from the field on this one. If you guys are testing, it's not working, let us know.
Cool. All righty. Any questions or anything on that? Everyone excited? Woo. Not had our coffee today. It's all good. All right, then. Well, I hereby wrap up episode 2 of the Juju Show. And just for the record, our next show, we're looking at having January 4th after the holiday. So everyone, Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. And then the one after that will be the 18th of January, approximately the same bat time. We'll have announcements going out. So look forward to seeing you all in episode 3. We need a tagline for these things. All right. Thanks everyone for your time. I appreciate it.
Thanks for hosting, Rick.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.